Chapter 2. The Divergent Directions of the Evolution of Life: Torpor, Intelligence, Instinct. The evolution movement would be a simple one, and we should have been able to determine its direction if life had described a single course, like that of a solid ball shot from a cannon. But it proceeds rather like a shell, which suddenly bursts into fragments, which fragments, being themselves shells, burst in their turn into fragments destined to burst again, and so on for a time incommensurably long. We perceive only what is nearest to us, namely the scattered movements of the pulverized explosions. From them, we have to go back, stage by stage, to the original movement. When a shell bursts, the particular way it breaks is explained both by the explosive force of the powder it contains and by the resistance of the metal. So of the way life breaks into individuals and species. It depends, we think, on two series of causes: the resistance life meets from inert matter, and the explosive force, due to an unstable balance of tendencies, which life bears within itself. The resistance of inert matter was the obstacle that had first to be overcome. Life seemed to have succeeded by this dint of humility, by making itself very small and very insinuating, bending to physical and chemical forces, consenting even to go a part of the way with them, like the switch that adopts for a while the direction of the rail it is endeavoring to leave. Of phenomena in the simplest forms of life, it is hard to say whether they are still physical and chemical, or whether they are already vital. Life had to enter thus into the habits of inert matter, in order to draw it little by little, magnetized as it were, to another track. The animate forms that first appeared were therefore of extreme simplicity. They were probably tiny masses of scarcely differentiated protoplasm, outwardly resembling the amoeba observable today, but possessed of the tremendous internal push that was to raise them even to the highest forms of life. That, in virtue of this push, the first organism sought to grow as much as possible seems likely, but organized matter has a certain limit of expansion that is very quickly reached. Beyond a certain point it divides instead of growing. Ages of effort and prodigies of subtlety were probably necessary for life to get past this new obstacle. It succeeded in inducing an increased number of elements, ready to divide, to remain united. By this division of labor it knotted between them an indissoluble bond. The complex and quasi-discontinuous organism is thus made to function as would a continuous living mass which has simply grown bigger. But the real and profound causes of division were those which life bore within its bosom. For life is tendency, and the essence of a tendency is to develop in the form of a sheaf, creating by its very growth divergent directions, among which its impetus is divided. This we observe in ourselves, in the evolution of that special tendency, which we call our character. Each of us, glancing back over his history, will find that this child personality, though indivisible, united in itself divers persons, which could remain blended just because they were in their nascent state. This indecision, so charged with promise, is one of the greatest charms of childhood. But these interwoven personalities become incompatible in course of growth, and as each of us can live but one life, a choice must perforce be made. We choose in reality without ceasing. Without ceasing also we abandon many things. The route we pursue in time is strewn with the remains of all that we began to be, of all that we might have become. But nature, which has at command an incalculable number of lives, is in no wise bound to make such sacrifices. She preserves the different tendencies that have bifurcated with their growth. She creates with them diverging series of species that will evolve separately. These series may, moreover, be of unequal importance. The author who begins a novel puts into his hero many things which he is obliged to discard as he goes on. Perhaps he will take them up later in other books, and make new characters with them, who will seem like extracts from, or rather complements of, the first, but they will almost always appear somewhat poor and limited in comparison with the original character. So with regard to the evolution of life. The bifurcations on the way have been numerous, but there have been many blind alleys beside the 2 or 3 highways, and of these highways themselves, only one, that which leads through the vertebrates up to man, has been wide enough to allow free passage to the full breadth of life. We get this impression when we compare the societies of bees and ants, for instance, with human societies. The former are admirably ordered and united, but stereotyped. The latter are open to every sort of progress, but divided, and incessantly at strife with themselves. The ideal would be a society always in progress and always in equilibrium, but this ideal is perhaps unrealizable. The two characteristics that would fain complete each other, which do complete each other in their embryonic state, can no longer abide together when they grow stronger. If one could speak otherwise than metaphorically of an impulse toward social life, it might be said that the brunt of the impulse was born along the line of evolution ending at man, and that the rest of it was collected on the road leading to the Hymenoptera. The societies of ants and bees would thus present the aspect complementary to ours. But this would be only a matter of expression. There has been no particular impulse toward social life. There is simply the general movement of life, which on divergent lines is creating forms ever new. If societies should appear on 2 of these lines, they ought to show divergence of paths at the same time as community of impetus. They will thus develop two classes of characteristics, which we shall find vaguely complementary of each other. So, our study of the evolution movement will have to unravel a certain number of divergent directions, and to appreciate the importance of what has happened along each of them. In a word, to determine the nature of the dissociated tendencies and estimate their relative proportion. Combining these tendencies, then, we shall get an approximation, or rather an imitation, of the indivisible motor principle whence their impetus proceeds. Evolution will thus prove to be something entirely different from a series of adaptations to circumstances, as mechanism claims. Entirely different also from the realization of a plan of the whole, as maintained by the doctrine of finality.